Hello everyone, it's Silvia from Fairlight Tarot. Welcome back to my channel. I have to be honest with you, it's been one of those days and so I just want to chill with my decks, playing with my decks and trying up some matching between tarot and oracle decks, specifically with recent decks that came into my collection. So let's all hang out together. So one of the decks that I purchased recently is the Fool's Items Oracle of Enchantment, and this is actually a this is an oracle deck that was possible to purchase, I think, together with one of the 78 tarot. I'm not entirely sure whether it was the ecological or the magical. I bought it in one of the 3 reputable shops in Ho Chi Minh City where they sell legit decks, and they did have the 78 as well, but I bought so many decks that day and then I went back and my budget was really stretched and I just found myself deciding whether I wanted to buy, I think it was between the Margaret Peterson and the 78, but the 78 was a bit more expensive, so I decided for the Margaret Peterson deck, the anniversary edition, which is really a cool deck. And so this one, instead of you know, buying the combo with the tarot and the oracle, I just bought the oracle deck. And the reason why I got this one, and I'm quite happy that I did, is because I think, while looking at it, I thought that it could actually pair really well with a tarot deck, one of the tarot decks that I've got by Ciro Marchetti, because it feels like there's a similarity of art style, there's a similarity of colors as well, possibly not all of Ciro's decks, but I'm thinking the certainly, if we're looking at the Mystic palette, probably the colored version, not the sepia tone or the muted version, because obviously we've got a full spectrum of colors here. But I don't know, I think it may, and it's also because the cards are glossy, they are rather large actually, so it just gave me the vibes for that kind of combo. And I'm not entirely sure, I haven't tried that out yet, but as I said at the beginning of this video, this is what I literally do when I want to chill with my decks. I don't necessarily have the necessity to do a reading for myself. I don't feel the need to do any kind of personal growth today. I don't feel like journaling. I don't feel like meditating. And I've done everything that I had to do today. I've been working, I'm doing my cardio exercises, and now it's just 5 p.m. I've fed my cats, and so I'm like, okay, it's 2 hours before my husband comes back home. I just don't feel like plopping in front of the TV and watching a TV show, even though I absolutely love watching TV shows. So I've got nothing against it. It's just that we have just started watching season 4 of Only Murders in the Buildings, and I have to wait for him because otherwise I would just skip ahead and watch all of the episodes and then I will just feel really guilty. So what we're going to do, we're just going to give it a quick shuffle. And by the way, let me know if you have this deck, because I think that it was also possible to back as a Kickstarter campaign. I'm not entirely sure, but sometimes, and I don't remember whether it's Kickstarter or Indiegogo, one of those two. But I never actually backed one of these collective kind of decks. And I'm sorry to say, this is actually the first one of all of those issues. So I don't have because this is an oracle, I don't have any of the 78 tarot. You know what I'm talking about. So I'm actually asking, let me know in the comments below if you have, particularly if you have more than one, could you please let me know which one do you think that is the most beautiful one? And by beautiful, I mean not just as in obviously the artwork and you know, the way they express the meanings of the cards, but also the most cohesive one, because that's one of the deal breakers for me when considering to purchase a collective deck is that it might not work for me because of the way my brain works, basically, or it doesn't work, in the sense that I look at the cards and I need to see some kind of consistency and cohesiveness. And when I fail to see that, for example, if it is like these three cards, I'm perfectly fine with. Perhaps this one as well, this one as well. It doesn't feel like we're far off some kind of a, let's say, common art style and themes. And I believe the themes are generally quite cohesive because obviously, you know, the nautical is all about water and the ecological and the magical, for example, etc. But when I see something completely different, then that actually stands out. And I find myself in a situation which I don't necessarily know how to read the card, whether it stands out because it wants to tell me a very specific kind of message, or because it's just a creator. Like, for example, I absolutely love Johanna Nelson. She's the author of the Monster Tarot and other decks, and also Oracle decks, and this is one, let's say this is her art style, and in specific she did create I think it was a tarot deck, it could have been an Oracle deck, with this kind of art style with cats. Which you would think, if you know me, that I would have been all over it. I have yet to pull the trigger on that deck. It is on my wish list, however. But when I see all of these cards, and there's a few of them with a very similar art style, and then I see this one which has, you know, it's kind of a different stroke, it's a different art style, it's a different color. So this one actually stands out for me. And this one kind of, you know, between these two, I think that these two, I can actually put them together, but this one, not really. So it does give me pause. It is sometimes a deal breaker for me when the art style is really like a punch in the face, different from the others. But in this case, I'm actually happy with this deck because I have to say I don't feel like we are completely jumping from one art style to the other. It feels very cohesive to me, and I don't know whether it is because it's a conscious choice or because it's just a really nice occurrence. But in any case, this one really feels like it's calling for a match with Chiro's decks, and I'm just gonna try first the Mystic Palette Tarot with the color edition, as I mentioned before, simply because I believe that you know, I really love all of Chiro's decks. I really do. And it's ironic, but I was looking at the Tarot of Dreams and I heard that perhaps the French version has a better cardstock. If you know something about that, let me know, because I'm this close to buying it and I don't want to buy the English edition just to find out afterwards that the French edition has a better cardstock. Now this is the Mystic Palette, it is the full color, let's say, edition, but it is the German edition, and so I feel like the cardstock is actually slightly smaller than the English edition. But in any case, let's have a look at what the feelings, what the vibes are with these two together. I really like that we're seeing a very similar color palette. I did think that was going to happen when I thought, you know, in my head when I compared the two with the memory that I had about that deck. I don't know if the, I don't want to say the art style is similar as well, but I would say that because this deck, the Fool's Items Oracle, is a more cohesive deck than other collaboration decks, I'm actually okay with the fact that it's not exactly the same type of art style when I pair it up with Chiro's deck. Does that make sense? What I mean to say is that because I'm already opening my mind to not finding exactly the same kind of art style in one deck, you know, when I pair it up with another deck, I'm already in that space of mind. I don't know if I made it worse by trying to explain it, but in any case, I feel like we've got something here. I'm actually enjoying this. And as I said, this is a completely different kind of practice for me. I do enjoy looking at tarot cards as well, oracle decks obviously too, but not necessarily with the intention of working on myself or working on a reading, or you know, it's not a project. This is literally just me hanging out with my decks. I mean, after all, a collection is something that we build for ourselves because it makes us feel better, or at least, you know, that's the meaning of having a collection of things. So that's my meaning of having a collection of tarot decks. And I have recently posted a VR to Candy from Candy Soul and Soil. A few weeks ago, she posted a really smart video, and it was called Collections Meet Decks. And it's all about acknowledging that as human beings, we have sometimes the need to accumulate, or rather collect, gather objects that actually make us feel better or make us happy. And I definitely recognize that drive in myself from time to time. And in my case, so I didn't know what to do because I do have more than one collection, and I have rings, I have fountain pens, I have inks, I have fridge magnets from all over the world, and I have a lot of books, in specific horror books. And so I posted a poll both on Instagram and on YouTube, and it was overwhelmingly, you know, the rings category was overwhelmingly winning. But everyone suggested maybe pick two, and so I actually picked rings and tarot decks, of course, and fountain pens, and that was a really fun video. If you haven't watched it, I just posted it recently, and it's so much fun. There's a lot of interactions with my cats because that day they felt like being really vocal, and so, you know, recently I just posted a couple of photos of my cats as well, and there's lots of photos of my travels as well, because I buy decks whenever I travel, and I also buy rings whenever I travel, and sometimes I also buy pens whenever I travel. So it's something that is always, let's say, connected and related. It is always nice for me to present it to you. So what do you think about this pairing? I think I'm okay with it. I'm not blown away by the energy, but I have to say I'm also not, I don't feel like turning my back to it yet. Perhaps I need to work with it a little bit more. And but I've got on my table, I've got a few of the new decks that I bought in the last few weeks when I was traveling. And I'm so very happy about being able to do so, because it's a fantastic experience. And let me tell you, when you start talking with someone who has even a shop, a tarot deck and an oracle deck shop, it's always very interesting because you ask for their opinion. You kind of get in touch with what the feel of the country is for cartomancy and divination. And it's always very interesting because it's always very different from my own experience. And I always find it fascinating. So one of the decks, another oracle deck that I bought whilst I was still at the LT Tarot shop in Ho Chi Minh City, is this one here, which is available on Tevada. And it is, so I don't know who the publisher is, in the sense that I know that they publish a lot of these decks, and they are driven, let's say, to the Chinese, or by the Chinese market, or the, let's say, Chinese speaking market, because I will have you know, if you travel in Southeast Asia nowadays, the second language has become, well, the second language is still English, I guess, in the sense that everyone speaks English because there's a lot of tourists and they have to be able to interact with them. But if you look at a national language, they will have their own country language, and that as a second language, there will be Mandarin Chinese, sometimes even Cantonese, because there's a lot of immigration for many, many reasons. And so this company caters for the Chinese speaking market. But it's also, these decks also come with an English part as well. So don't be put off by the fact that the booklet at the beginning is in Chinese, because the second part of the booklet is in English. And so you can see you've got the small thumbprint in color of the cards, you've got the keyword, you got a bit of a description here, and then what is, it calls them alignment words, and it's just basically another bunch of keywords, which is always very helpful. So I actually really like this deck. It's not a big deck, it's only got 36 cards, which is not necessarily what I'm happy to use. I would prefer to have 40 plus. My ideal would be 44, 46. And the reason behind that is just generally speaking, you will see people using Oracle decks also in combination with tarot. And if you do it like many of us do, and you put the, like I did before, so you put the tarot, you split it in two, and you put two halves beside, on the side of the Oracle deck. Obviously, you don't want to have too many decks, you know, on the tarot. You just want to have something more or less similar. Obviously, you need to account for the thickness of the cards as a number of things, and that's not an exact science. But what I mean is that you want to have the possibility to be interacting with your decks as much as possible. And so 32 cards, like I'm thinking about Los Carabel Oracle decks, sometimes they come with 32, 33 cards, and that is really a pity because we want to see more, especially when we love a deck, we want to see more of it, or at least, is that just me? I don't know. In any case, as you can see, so I've been told by a few of you actually mentioned the Heaven and Earth Tarot, which looks very similar to this one. I do not have the Heaven and Earth Tarot. However, I do have the Darkness of Light Tarot, which is this one here. But my edition of the Darkness of Light Tarot is not the one with the dark or black borders. It's the one with the white borders. And for that reason, I keep on saying that it is a different deck. I mean, it's got different vibes. And when I use it, because of the white borders instead of black, it feels like even the artwork within the frame of the borders is actually brighter. And I don't know whether it's an effect, because obviously it's a very cool thing, but your brain tends to read with a bird's eye view the image that is projected, that the eyes basically read in front of them, and then they send the data to the brain. So with the white, there will be a propension of the brain to actually detect more the brighter colors rather than the darker colors. It's the same reason why, for example, when there's an image that is missing a spot of color, we will tend to just replace that white spot of color with the color that surrounds the white spot. It's very normal, absolutely normal, but because of that, I'm not entirely sure that this is actually going to work. I mean, the images are certainly resonating with the color and perhaps also with the art style, but I do tend to see the Darkness of Light, the edition that I've got, as lighter than the dark edition, and so I don't necessarily know whether these two are actually matching up. But you know what? I actually look at the cards now and I feel like it actually works. So I don't know. I mean, on the one hand, I'm always open to using two decks together, and I'm always open to suggestions. And yes, indeed, some of you suggested the Heaven and Earth Tarot, which I don't have. But the reason why I don't have that deck is because I feel like the Darkness of Light pretty much covers the same vibes. But I do think that you guys are right. I think that this one really, you know, will pair up better with the Heaven and Earth rather than the Darkness of Light, even if I did have the Dark Borders edition. I don't know, let me know in the comments below. I do, however, really like this deck, I have to say. It does resonate a lot with me. I find it very easy to interact with this deck. I believe that the keywords really match up quite nicely with the images depicted on the cards. As you can see here, for example, we got lost between the two of blades, and the Il Matto is in Italian, it's the magician. And so it feels like the message is very strong. I mean, obviously here we have a scene in which a person has gone fishing, but because their fishing rod broke in two, as you can see here, you know, they're losing the fish. Obviously they had caught the fish, but they're losing it because the fishing rod is breaking in two, and so the fish is going to be able to swim away. So it feels like when you read it in a context between the two oblates, which is a renaming for the Suit of Swords and the Magician, what you see is that the hesitation that makes you wait too long when you find yourself stuck between a rock and a hard place. You don't have enough information to go on and take a decision, and on top of everything, you're even blindfolded, and you know, you're kind of really scared of taking the first step out of this situation. By waiting too long, you actually missed the prey, let's say the what you have been catching. And this is a reminder to actually use your skills, but also know about the timing of using them. It is interesting because you can't see it here, at least I don't think so, but generally speaking, one of the symbols related to the Magician is the lemniscate, you know, the figure 8. You know, that is generally on top of above the head of the Magician, and that actually refers to time, even though it points to infinity in time. But I do find it very easy to read these two decks together. So pathfinding, for example, with the King of Coins and the Five of Wands is also very clear as a message to me, because it tells you that you're searching for something, and it feels like at this right moment in time, you don't necessarily see yourself as making progress. You're still trying to find your path and the right way to do things. At the same time, the support comes from the King of Coins, because coins, the suit of coins is a renaming for Pentacles, it's the suit of the earth, and it's the suit that most connects us to the power of the earth, the grounding power of the earth, and the balancing power. And on top of everything, the king is obviously at the top of its evolution on the core card. So we're looking at really mastering the discipline here. So you have mastered the discipline. You can actually find it in yourself to find the right path. Even though there is this sense of confusion, the sense of fire, and the sense of competition, you're probably confused because you're surrounded by this Five of Wands, which is, you know, fires everywhere. You don't necessarily know which way to go because it feels like everyone is pulling you in one direction or another. So as you can see, it actually really works, and I'm really enjoying. I'm not struggling at all. If you notice the flow of my thoughts, it's, you know, it's going really smoothly. I don't feel like I'm struggling to pair up these two decks together. It also, you know, it relies a lot on the fact that the artwork is at least similar, if not necessarily as much as it would be with the Heaven and Earth Tarot is a pretty good match. But I want to try and pair it up with the deck that I originally thought it would pair up really well with this deck. And it's a much darker deck, so I'm not entirely sure, again, that it's going to work, but I'm willing to give it a try. And so we're just gonna put this back here in the middle. And now, so I wanted to try with the Tarot V rather than the Tarot Z. If you're not familiar with these two decks, they're both being published mass market by Lo Scarabeo. They are both created by Alejandro Colucci. It is one of my favorite decks, and I know that it's not everyone's cup of tea, in the sense that, of course, it's got a lot of really intense cards, let's put it this way. Some of them can even be triggering, I believe, and I completely understand that. Between the two of them, Tarot Z, Z stands for zombie, Tarot V stands for vampires. I actually prefer Tarot Z because I find there is so much hope in that deck, and every time that I talk about that deck, I immediately think about a book by Justin Cronin, which is called The Passage, which is one of my favorite books of the last 20-30 years. I do, however, have to say that I actually like the horror genre. So if you're not into horror genre, perhaps that book is not something you would enjoy. If you do like horror genre, that is a fantastic book. There's a coming of age, there's horror, there's vampires, there's not vampires, but there's these people that have been affected by a virus, and they lost their personality. And what they are doomed to do and repeat doing is to wander around searching for clues of who they were. And that is something that really, it breaks my heart every time that I think about that book. I love it so much. Now, this one, however, reminds me a bit less of that book, but I feel that we are more in sync with this oracle deck. But if it doesn't work, I'm open to admit my mistakes, and we're just gonna have a look at the other deck as well, so the Tarot Z. There's also another deck which is called Shadow Myth, which is really dark, perhaps too dark, and I'm not entirely sure that I will be able to connect it with this one. But in any case, so let's have a look. As I was saying, there's I believe in this case, because there's only one border in the Tarot V, and it's a bottom border, and it's actually quite dark, and it mirrors the border that is on the Oracle deck. I think that we can actually find ourselves already in a good situation. I love the fact that the colors are very similar. If you notice between these two, for example, the Miracle and the Ten of Pentacles, and we're looking at two figures that remind each other of you know, this sense of not knowing what's in front of them. One is closing their eyes, obviously in faith, because we're talking about a miracle, and this looks like a nun, but this person is also hooded and you can't see their eyes, and it is Ten of Pentacles. And ironically, the Ten of Pentacles, you know, it's the completion in the suit of the earth, so you're supposed to have completed that a quest to find a connection and a balance with the earth itself. And that might actually feel like a miracle. And then we look at this and it's just amazing. And I think this is the King of Pentacles. And I really like that there's this sense of completion coming from both the Ten of Pentacles, which is the end of the minors, but also the completion from the King, because the King is the maximum evolution throughout the court cards. So it is there is a very strong sense of having achieved something, obviously with also with the Miracle card. So I don't know, I feel that when we look at the two, so the darkness of light, in particular my own version of the darkness of the version that I have, not that I created it, the white bordered edition of the darkness of light, and Tarot V, I feel that perhaps Tarot V has got a bit more of the same energy and vibes. But let me know what you think in the comments below. So the Vast Enlightenment card, which is the name of this oracle, I don't remember if I actually mentioned that, has this one seems to be like a shadow deck, and there's a corresponding light deck. Also an oracle, obviously, and that one would pair up really well, for example, with the Eastern Ink tarot deck, but I didn't purchase it, I didn't buy it, so I cannot show you. I really enjoy these two together. They go really well, and I'm kind of, you know, I'm feeling the energy. And it's also because, I don't know about you guys, but we are in September, and so can we just please address the elephant in the room? I am one of those really crazy people that believe that it's okay to actually look for Halloween decorations in September. I mean, we only have 2 months, we have 2 months of shopping. And I personally, I just really love Halloween. And so why would I not want to spend more than just a couple of weeks with Halloween decorations? I'm not putting them up yet. I'm not putting them up yet. That will happen on the 1st of October. But I am shopping for them. I am keeping my eye out for them. And if I see something that I like, I'm actually going to purchase it. And let me tell you something. So I was in, I think it was Georgetown. Yes. So I was in Georgetown, Penang, which is an island in the northern part of Malaysia. and it's a really beautiful place. And I was in a mall, and there was a Daiso. So Daiso is a Japanese store, but they are, you can find them in Australia as well. You can find them throughout Southeast Asia, and they pretty much have everything. Think about a dollar store, more expensive, with only Japanese products, but including also, for example, food, snacks and stuff like that. So absolutely awesome. And guess what? At close to the door, let's say, so the one thing that they're actually trying to promote and push out was Halloween decoration. So I think that that tells me that it's okay to be buying Halloween decorations now. Raise your hands if you're buying Halloween decorations already. In any case, really loving these two together. I think that we find a very similar vibe, and I'm quite happy of how they are matching up. So another pairing that I'm really curious to try out is the Nova Witch Tarot with the Soul Mirror Oracle. The reason why I want to pair, and at least try to pair these two up together, is because the illustrator is actually the same, Anna Novice, and I am really in love with the Soul Mirror Oracle. Generally speaking, I use it when I want a very clear access to shadow work and light work, because I use it in combination with the Ephemer Tarot and the True Black Tarot. So if you're not familiar with those two decks, that both by the same author, Arthur Wang, and they're incredibly beautiful decks, really absolutely gorgeous, stunning, mind-blowingly stunning decks. But one of them, the True Black, is really like all of the backgrounds of the cards is black, and the Ephemer Tarot instead, all of the backgrounds of the cards is white. And so because the Soul Mirror has got, and let me just show you quickly to explain what I mean, every single one of the cards has got a keyword, but it's also got or let's say a title and then two keywords, and one of them is always referring to a shadow side, and one is referred to a light side of the title. So in, for example, here we got a Priestess, and we can see the shadow side is ignorance, when, for example, I can see that in the Hierophant rather than the let's say the Priestess or the High Priestess. The Hierophant, if you study the constellation, so the constellation is the number of cards in the numerological meaning of the major arcanas that are in the same that belong to the same number. So for example, the Hierophant would be number 5 because it's major arcana number 5, obviously, and the Temperance card would be in the same constellation as the Hierophant because it's also number 5, it's number 14, so 1 plus 4 is 5. So if you're interested in this, we're actually going through all of the major arcanas. We're almost done in my Read Like a Pro series, which is accessible to my members. And after that, I'm actually giving an announcement now. After I finish the series of Read Like a Pro with clusters and constellation within the major arcanas, what we're going to do is we're going to do I don't know if it's going to be once every 2 weeks or once a month. We're going to do a live in which I'm literally just teaching in practice how to better read tarot. So we're literally going to hang out with anyone who wants to join in a live, and we're just going to do readings after readings, not necessarily for us, but it's going to be with exercises, going to be with examples. One thing that I used to do when I was teaching tarot to an actual classroom, I used to do tarot readings for a lot of fictional characters out of books or out of movies, for example, out of TV shows, and it's lots and lots of fun, but at the same time it is very useful to learn in practice how to read tarot, because I feel that you can know the meanings of the cards, but if you don't practice in reading, you'll never really achieve a good level. And the problem is that you cannot so it's not like people come to you, like 10 people every day come to you to get you to do their reading. So obviously you need to practice with something else. So it's going to be lots of fun. So if you want to join my membership, it's for accessible from my Sunlight members and up. And it's very affordable. I think in US dollars about $9 95 or something like that per month. And there's so many other things that we do. We do deck studies, we do energies of the weeks, we do deck and walk with custom spreads and stuff like that. So it's going to be really fun. So in any case, as I was saying, the Hierophant has that risk. When the Hierophant is so sure of what they know, of their knowledge, that it becomes reversed and it just becomes dogmatic, and that is definitely a mistake, and that is a precursor for ignorance. Or they can decide to become wise and be open-minded and constantly learn in order to be able to teach. So I love this deck because it really, as you can see, it gives you the possibility to go really deep on exploring the shadow and the light side of these two meanings of the card. But because we've got the same illustrator, I don't know, I honestly have not tried to pair these two up together yet. So this is absolutely, you know, new to me, and I'm very excited to try it with you. So obviously I need to give it a shuffle because I only just presented this deck the other day in my latest, one of my latest Tarot and Oracle decks haul. And so it is still in order. So let me just give it a shuffle. Okay, let's see. So as always, we'll just position the Oracle deck here, and then we're just going to split the Tarot deck and put it by the sides. And okay, so what I can see immediately is that the color palette is slightly different. So we've got more earthy tones when it comes to the Tarot deck, and we got more black and white when it comes, sometimes even gray or kind of teal blues when it comes to the Oracle deck. That doesn't necessarily mean that I'm not going to enjoy this pairing. It's just something that I'm noticing. I also noticed the fact that we are looking at a deck with white borders when it comes to the Tarot deck, whereas the Oracle deck does not have borders. That actually prompts me to think that perhaps it would be nice to trim the borders off, because, and not all of them obviously, we're just gonna do it in exactly the same way. So just trim off like here, leaving a bit of the border here at the bottom of the card, but trimming this off, the top off and the sides. Basically the result will be like this, like the Oracle deck. So I don't know if anyone has this deck, the Nova Witch Tarot. Let me know. Did you actually trim it? Did you happen to trim it down to the artwork? Because that looks to me like if I want to use these two together, it would definitely benefit from that modification. It doesn't necessarily mean that this deck itself will benefit from that, but the combination. And this one, let me just say, the Nova Witch Tarot is very affordable in Australia. It is because Blue Angel is Australian, and it's also because we have a few resellers that they probably don't do any justice to the tarot industry, because they happen to sell at cost. So they sell the decks at cost price as opposed to cost price plus markup for their profits. And the reason why they're doing that is because they have this marketing campaign in which they just sell a lot of products, not just tarot decks, but sometimes even books, at cost or even below cost, in order to be able to attract clients. And those are the really big retailers that they make profits on anything else. So it's almost like the marketing campaign of a supermarket, that sometimes they sell things at a cost, but they sell something else with a really high price simply because they want to bring people in and they know that they will eventually end up buying something else. I don't know if it makes sense, but it actually is a legit marketing, let's say, theory or method. I'm not entirely sure that it does any good to the tarot industry. Obviously, I am not that naive. If I find this deck, for example, at $25, I'm not going to spend $35 on it. You know, I don't look for, you know, to spend more. When I would eventually do that sometimes, but just to promote It's definitely not a big chain of resellers, but when it's a single shop, in that case, I don't mind paying a premium. But if it's a big one, and I'm not going to say the name of the chain, but think about your American Walmart, for example. It's probably not as big as Walmart, but it is a very big reseller, you know, in Australia. So I have been talking a lot, and I have not been paying attention to the cards. But in reality I was, and I am going to say this. I am going to try, so I'm going to stop pairing it here. I'm going to definitely try and modify this deck and trim it down to the artwork in order to make it more similar to the Oracle deck. And it's also probably benefiting from that. No, it's the same size. That's okay. I thought that it was actually wider. I think that I'm not, let's say, because I didn't spend too much money on this deck, as I said, it was only $25, I'm okay with modifying it. And I know that it just came out, there is plenty of availability, it is very unlikely to go out of print, and so I don't feel bad. Even in the event that I don't end up liking the modification that I'm doing, you know, I'm gonna be okay in rebuying the deck. So I'm definitely gonna try and do that, and then let's see what happens when we're looking at more, you know, similarities when it comes to the layout of the cards. I don't know. I've heard your opinion when I was presenting the Nova Witch Tarot. A couple of you mentioned that many of these cards they're just not doing it for you, and I completely understand, because originally I had the same thought, and that's the reason why I wanted to see whether I feel more for this deck, or I feel more comfortable in using it when I'm pairing it up with the Oracle deck. But ironically, I just was looking at the card and I just was not feeling it. And this is a way to show that even though we are looking at two decks that have been created by the same illustrator, it doesn't necessarily mean that they have the same vibes. You know what I mean? So just to corroborate that, what I'm going to do now, very quickly, I'm going to show you the difference between that pairing we've just seen and the pairing that I always use with the Soul Mirror Oracle, which I said before, with the Ephemera Tarot and the True Black Tarot. So I'll be right back. So here's the two decks, and we're going to put them here because that's exactly what I'm going to do. But as I said, it's going to be really quick because this is not about this Oracle deck. It was just about, you know, the possibility to show you that indeed, you know, things sometimes work better even when they're not, they don't show exactly the same art style. Sometimes it just resonates a lot better. And so let's do this to level these two out. And you see immediately what I mean with that. There's a spark, there's a connection between these three decks. I know that probably this one is very dark. I hope that there's enough light. Let me see if I can put a bit more light. Okay, I'm not entirely sure that make any kind of difference. In any case, this is a rather dark tarot deck, but if you have it, you'll know how beautiful this deck is. So we're starting already with the 10 of Wands here, the Magician here, between the Communication card. So this is, do you see what I mean? It's already something that is flowing. So it's telling me that the communication can be on the shadow side, can be stifled. Because the Magician in this case is to be read in reversed. We're looking at a Magician who's not actually using their resources, their powers. It's almost as if the Magician right now was finding themselves under Mercury retrograde, because guess what? Guess what? That's exactly what happens when you look at communication during Mercury retrograde. It is stifled. But on the light side, what we can see here is the 10 of Wands, in which there is this sense of fatigue. So we're still going through Mercury retrograde, and by the way, we're not right now, but I'm looking at the situation here on the card. But what we're doing is we're still succeeding. It is telling us that it's a moment in which is exactly the moment before you really need to stop and take a break. But at the same time, there is a sense of keep on going and resilience in this card. Perhaps the load is too big, but it is, you see how it's easy. So celebration with mournful and joyous. Celebration, look at that. So mournful, and I immediately thought about a funeral wake. So when we do, and I talked about my mom's funeral wake because it was actually a bittersweet moment because everyone came by, everyone attended. My house, my dad's house was really full of people, and we had caterers keep on coming, and they were all coming and paying their respect, and so it was really emotional. At the same time, I felt really connected to my mom during the wake because everyone was talking about her, and it was so beautiful because they were remembering her, and it was very emotional. So the star card is fantastic, even though it is connected to something that is pointing to grieving, to loss, to a mournful kind of celebration. And on the other side, on the light side, we got joyous with the Seven of Cups. And even though the Seven of Cups is that situation in which you're kind of lost, you're kind of confused because you're looking at all the things that are in front of you and you don't necessarily know what to pick up, that can actually mean that there's a lot of things that are good for you in front of you. And so if you choose to open your mind and just feel the attraction of something that is good for you, there is a saying that says what you seek is seeking you. So obviously you can see it in many ways, you can interpret that in many ways, but I choose to interpret that when you seek out good people, good company, good food, you know, good experiences, good music, everything good, that's what will also be attracted to you. So that's what you will get in return as well. So you see how much you can talk when you use these three decks together. It's uncertainty, doubtful, or confident. We can have obviously the Queen of Swords, that is always the Queen of Swords is fantastic. It's my significator because that is something that I love to do when mentoring someone. For example, whether it's in tarot or when I used to mentor a person at work, and I remember testing him all the time and asking him, and sometimes he will come up with a strategy for work and I would say, okay, are you really sure about that? What do you think about that? What do you think is strong? And at the beginning, he thought that I was testing him because I was doubting that it was indeed a successful strategy. But then he understood that I was just trying to see whether he actually felt confident about it. And so there's always raising doubts is a good thing. Doubting things is a good thing because that's the way in which we actually gain a lot more knowledge. It is through doubt that we get to the road, you know, to certainty. And confidence, obviously, confidence with the Five of Wands in this case is a bit tricky to read, but what I can feel in this case is that when you look at the energy of the Five of Wands in a sequence, when you read it in a sequence, you see that it's between the Four of Wands and the Six of Wands. So the Four of Wands is that situation in which there is this celebration because there is the extension of the authority. So it is the reincarnation of the Emperor in the Suit of Wands. That's the way I read the Four of Wands. It's not just a celebration, but it's a celebration because there has been chaos, there has been expansion, and finally now there's law and order. So, you know, the figure of the Emperor. But sometimes you have someone as actually not happy with that kind of situation, with that kind of order, and they raise their hand and they actually doubt you. And then, you know, in the sequence, you get rid of that wound, basically. You iron out all the doubts and all the issues, and that's how you get to victory, which is represented by the Six of Wands. So that's how I read in sequence. That's something we're going to talk about in the Read Like a Pro with my members as well. And I could go on forever, but this wasn't meant to be a video in which I was explaining the way in which I read these three decks together. I just wanted to show you that indeed these three are really beautiful together. They're very evocative, very communicative, whereas, for example, the Nova Witch, even though I was reading it, looking at the artwork and thinking, yeah, of course I can see it's the same creator, same illustrator, but the vibes were different and it wasn't really speaking to me. And so right now, what I'm going to do, I'm going to try and modify the deck. I'm going to give it one last chance to see if it works for me or not. And if it doesn't work, I'm completely fine with it, because you know, I don't want to force things, especially not in a day like today. Today we're just here to hang out together and have a look at these decks, have a look at these really beautiful cards. This pairing is so beautiful. It's just it's very emotional, it's very poignant, it's full of if harmony. I feel like saying harmony, even though obviously we're looking at shadow side as well, not just the light side. But it's almost as if the shadow side were in function of attaining harmony, so of finding balance and grounding. And that's the reason why many of us do shadow work, because we want to get to the light, right? It's, you know, acknowledging what's in the shadow, bringing it back to the light, assessing whether it still fulfills a role in your life, and if so, nourishing it, and if not, just releasing it. Amazing, just loving these three together. And last but not least, this is a pairing that I feel like it's almost like a bit of a cheat, in the sense that yes, it is the same author. Yes, it is even called the same way. So it's Quen Tarot and Quen Oracle. So obviously the art style is going to be similar. The color palette, I expect it to be similar. There's a lot to say about the fact that probably the layout is going to be similar. And this is an oracle deck that is actually based on curated art by this author. So obviously we may even get to see some of these images repeated in this deck, but I am absolutely fine with this. And I'm actually planning a video that I think I'm gonna call, I don't know what I'm gonna call it yet, but it will be a challenge. So I challenge all tarot tubers out there to do a VR if you feel like it, if you find it funny and entertaining. But sometimes I feel like as readers, tarot readers, we have to allow ourselves to just not always abide by the rules, and you know, allow ourselves to sometimes either make mistakes in buying decks, or even buying decks that we know they're not going to work, but we just wanted them. You know what I mean? So let's not feel ashamed that I'm pairing up, I'm being lazy and I'm pairing up two decks that are probably going to match up together because they're being illustrated by the same author. Because as we've seen earlier, it's not always the case. So the Soul Mirror Oracle, which was illustrated by Anna Noves, which is also the same illustrator as the Nova Witch Tarot, you know, those two don't match up, or at least now with, you know, without the modification. I don't know if they will. But we, as tarot reader, we have the possibility sometimes to also do the easy thing or the lazy thing. There's no law against it. So, and I'm not entirely sure that it's going to work. So let's just have a look at these two. Okay, the first thing that I can feel is that the cardstock is the same as well, and the tactile experience is very good. So that's already something positive. I don't think I've actually, sorry about that, I don't think I've actually shuffled the tarot. So let me just give it a quick shuffle. Okay, so let's try this again. And by the way, I forgot to take out the additional full cards. So this deck has got an additional 4 or 5 full cards. My favorite one is the one with the hourglass, because I really like the way in which it reminds me of the passing of time, but that's okay. So let's level these two out. So obviously it is the same author, but there's also something to say. When I looked at this oracle deck, I actually noticed that the paintings that have been curated span throughout 2 decades, more or less, even longer. And so obviously you will notice that there are differences in the art style, simply because an artist is always evolving. Like this one, for example, is a painting that is called Love Letters, from the winter of 1990. So obviously it's a different style from this one from 2005, or even this one, the tarot deck, for example. So I'm curious to see if, you know, my theory about the fact that aesthetics are not all everything, they're not all, that we need to pay attention to when pairing up two decks is revealing itself to be true or not. I feel that we are looking at very similar vibes though, I have to be honest. And it is very flowing. So we got Run with the Devil Winter 2004 between the Ace of Pentacles and the Five of Cups. So it's obviously that sense of knowing when to run, knowing when you're being defeated, knowing when not to stand up and fight. There is a situation here, obviously there is a sense of loss, and try and just stay in there and try and flip back upright the cups that have been tilted is not gonna bring back the liquid back on in the cup. So we have been defeated, let's accept the loss, you know, actually cut our losses and just move on. So I'm just feeling that kind of message coming from the card. Goodbye and hope. This is a really beautiful card. Actually, I'm using this oracle for my energies of the week videos with my members, and I was asking my members to tell me whether they're happy with this deck or not, because it's a bit of an odd oracle deck to use for those kind of videos. But I have to say, the combination between the images, the titles, and the titles of the painting is actually very resonating for all of us, and so I received good feedbacks. So we got goodbye and hope. There is this sense of knowing that there's a hope of finding each other again in the future, and the protagonist or the character in this card is actually closing their eyes, and there is that sense of wishing. So it feels like it's a longing for someone to return. It's a goodbye that is not goodbye forever, it's just a goodbye for now. There is this sense of the Seven of Swords here. There is the imposter syndrome for me. It's knowing that you have to do something that is, generally speaking, it's against your values, your moral code, but you have to do it. You find yourself in a situation in which there's nothing else you can do. And so it feels like there is this separation here. It does mirror this sense of separation. And I also love the fact that these two characters actually look very similar. Their expression on their faces are very similar. And there is the sense of passing of time of the Fool with the Hourglass. I think I'm loving these two together. I'm not, I am willing to hear what you think about it, obviously. It's always very interesting to hear a different point of view, but I am quite happy with what I see here. And I have to say, I also do appreciate, so I know that this kind of art style is not necessarily everyone's cup of tea, but I remind you that this deck, the Quen Tarot, actually won the Carta Awards in 2022 as the best tarot deck of the year. So obviously it has been voted, so there's people that really appreciate this art style, and I have to say I am one of them. I really like it. It doesn't try too hard. I think it's very expressive at the same time, but also almost deceptively simple, in the sense that it feels like we're looking at a child's drawing, but at the same time it also feels like there's a lot of depth in the cards themselves, in the painting, in the images. So I'm really curious to hear what you think about this pairing. But as I said, this was the last one because I don't want to spend too much on this deck. I have another couple of decks that I want to pair up, but I am still waiting for a Kickstarter deck that should be delivered in a couple of weeks, and so I'm just going to include them in my Tarot and Oracle decks pairing for the month of October, which is going to be very interesting because I'm expecting an avalanche of Kickstarter rewards with Tarot and Oracle decks, so it's going to be really exciting for the last couple of weeks of September and the first couple of weeks of October. For now, thank you so much for watching. If you like what you saw, please don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already. But for now, have a great day.